Greetings, friends. I'm going to tell a story which I've told before. Excuse me if you don't want to hear it again. It's one of my most favorite stories because I learned a lot. It took place in Colombia in 2012, where I volunteered just for a few weeks in Bogota, one of the biggest cities there. But the purpose of this video isn't so much to tell you about how international volunteering can often be disappointing, how you show up at projects which are often fake. That's kind of obvious. The thing that's more important that we may not notice is why we enable these things to continue. You may say, well, you've already enabled it just by showing up and giving them your money, and that's true. But at the very least, if you realize that you've been had and these people have suckered you for your money and they didn't deliver what they said was actually there, and you're at blame too for being gullible. But these things happen in international volunteering, unless there's been a miracle since I stopped doing it and it's different now. I highly doubt it. That's what cooperating with stupid is. It has to do with your conscience. You recognize something is stupid. You don't have to spend time philosophically explaining what you mean by stupid or fake. You know what it is on a deep level. To cooperate with it kills a little bit of your soul. So knowing what you know, if you've now had a chance to surmise the situation, why would you want to give good publicity to this organization, which is bad, which is doing some dishonest things? Why would you want to cooperate with that? It made my jaw drop when I found out that most of the other volunteers there had cooperated. And I'd already done a lot of volunteering before this around in other countries. So I knew generally what sorts of options are out there. This was to do with IVHQ, which I think still exists, and they're an intermediary. They have a website, they have an office based in New Zealand. So they're like a corporation. Their website is very successful. It has many different partner organizations that they list. So they work with partners. You pay IVHQ a fee, usually by credit card, and they create an online profile for you and give you some reading materials and basically arrange for people to pick you up in another country where the volunteer organization is. And then the local people pretty much take it from there. But they're supposed to be supervised enough that they provide safe positions, safe place to live, adequate food, dorm-style living, often transportation to orphanages or schools or construction projects or something to do with the environment or something else, or like in an office maybe, or I mean, I've done teaching, I've done other things. So I was trying construction for something new because I was still relatively young at that time and excited to travel and try new things. So why not do construction? And of course, I had never received formal construction training, but it seemed like fun. And I had done some construction in Peru, which had gone well, so I was eager to continue that. But by the time I got to Bogota, right from the beginning, this place was the worst that I have ever been to. There's a number of reasons why it was the worst. There was no real construction going on. I mean, we go to this school where there's supposed to be stuff for us to do, but the floor man who would be directing us didn't even show up a lot of the time. He just wouldn't be there. So then it was on us to figure out what to do, and that was just bad. And I mean, again, you could say, well, I mean, you kind of asked for it. And yeah, I guess what do we expect? If you're not really trained in English teaching or trained in construction, you can't just show up in a developing country and always expect that, yeah, it'll be easy for you to find something to do here. This requires specialized knowledge to an extent. I mean, not all of the construction's that difficult. It can be fun for a time, but it's demoralizing if you build some fence and then, oh, they just take it down later because you didn't do the right job, or they don't want it there, or there's no communication, or so you just be doing some stupid thing like, you know, they wanted to protect where some of the dogs come or kill the, you know, attack the cats, so we had to build something for that. And just, like, zero communication with the school. And there's no going out of your way here. Self-initiative, sure. I'm not saying quit at everything in life, but just recognize that this is a bad place. Maybe you got to start over and rethink this. And I'm not against like going out of your way. You can make real connections, but this is just an instance where it all went wrong. The name of the organization I was volunteering with was called Emerging Voices, and the director was a woman named Monica. There was a vanity and just an obliviousness to Monica. She was past the wall, that's for sure. There were no other employees to this organization. That's one of the red flags that you don't see in other more established volunteer organizations. But Monica was from an upper class Colombian background. The way she dressed showed this. I mean, she would have her nails done upstairs in her private suite. Meanwhile, all the volunteers are crammed into 2 or 3 bedrooms between the lower part of the flat, which is on like the 10th floor of an apartment building in a very nice area of the city. I am 100% sure that Monica chose to have the apartment located in this nice neighborhood because she is status conscious. Her excuse was that, oh, it's safer. And yes, there is some danger in a city like Bogota when you go to the poorer neighborhoods. But the fact was that we volunteers were spending minimum 45 minutes to get to the placement taking transit. Some of us taking an hour or more than an hour just one way, and then you have to come back. So the logistics of this were not planned out at all. We were so far from where we had to volunteer. It's an enormous city, and I've volunteered in New Delhi, India, Cusco, Peru, which is, you know, a smaller town, but New Delhi, big city. I've volunteered in some small towns in Africa, so I've never ever had to spend more than like half an hour at most getting to where you have to volunteer because it's common sense. And that apartment was also moist and cold, so some of us got ill, or the food, or bacteria sometimes in the food. They didn't feed us enough food. I like to eat a lot of food because I'm a skinny guy, so we really like to eat. It doesn't do anything, it just burns through us. And she had a servant lady who was the cook. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with having servants, but you could tell that Monica kind of looked down on the servant lady, and there was a high status differential there. And I'm not saying that status differentials are a bad thing. Just the lack of humility is what I'm getting at. Oh, so materialistic with her nice SUV that she'd be driving around it and nice leather seats. There was a time when she was upset that someone was sitting on her leather seats a certain way. It may have been my friend who got ill on the bus and fainted, and Monica had to drive and pick him up and drive him home. But there was a case where she was like, oh, watch my leather seats. Be careful with that. But I wouldn't have finally had a negative confrontation with her about a lot of these problems if she had not gone out of her way to constantly photograph we, the volunteers, whether it's touring a new placement to see how it is, or just engaged in our project, whatever it is, teaching kids or feeding soup at a homeless shelter, which I did as well. But she'll be going out of her way to photograph it right away, often without asking us, most of the time without asking us. And secondly, doing this with fresh volunteers that have just showed up. Not many of them had been there for more than a few months. But it doesn't take that long to figure out what's going on here. So even after 2 weeks, I mean, I had to get out of there because obviously that's enough for me. But that's also enough. It seemed like more than a month, to be honest. Like, even though it's such a short amount of time, it seemed like a lot longer at the time. Of course, I stayed in Colombia a bit longer. I traveled a bit, but it's just a bunch of little things adding up. But the fact that she was trying to photograph us all the time, and you know she's just going to put that on the website, and then she's going to get more money from this, and then she'd be using the volunteer apartment for her own friends to get together once or twice a month and have a function or whatever, maybe a fundraiser, but really just a night for them to have fun and feel good about themselves because they're involved in making a difference for poor people, but they're not. None of that's going on. It's all fake. You know, a powerful, empowered Latina woman from the upper class, she's going to organize this thing. I mean, no, it doesn't work well, obviously. You need a man to do that. She also had a young lady, because most volunteers are females, and then there was a mix of guys and young women, and just all living in an apartment together. It's crazy situation, ridiculous situation. But by the way, Monica had like a spy woman, a younger lady who was hoping to be like maybe Monica's position one day. So if something we did would come to her attention, she would tell Monica. So then I thought, that girl, like, you're a bad influence here. Like you're not trustworthy at all. And other guys were sexually attracted to her, even though she was like a 6.5, maybe at best a 7. The volunteers that I had spoken to, they knew of these problems. I wasn't the only one. I had conversations with one guy in particular, and he was quite animated about, yeah, well, like he knew Monica was bad. He knew there were serious problems here. And then, of course, this is when IVHQ gets involved in the story, and they send their own freelance photography couple, a white couple from New Zealand. They weren't employees of IVHQ, they were just freelancing, traveling around various partner organizations around the continent. I don't know on whose dime, but it didn't sound too bad. And just spending a few days at each location, photographing, interviewing, producing promotional material that IVHQ could use, that Emerging Voices could use. Monica let us know that they were coming. Obviously, as soon as I heard of this, I didn't want anything to do with it. Why would I? I think I may have talked about this specifically with the other volunteers. I don't remember exactly, but all I know is that the volunteers recognized the serious problems like I did, recognized serious problems with Monica. No doubt about that. That view would have been held by the majority of the people there. I was just flabbergasted when I found out that the freelance couple had come. They had spent their few days, which is not long enough to figure out what's going on. You need to spend a few weeks, like I did, at least. Just a few days, not enough chance to figure out what's going on. Monica's taking them all around. Everything has to be clean. Everything has to be nice. Let's present a good image for our benefactors or whoever else is giving us money. Obviously, I was nowhere to be found when they were conducting these interviews at the apartment, but a lot of the volunteers took part and I never got to talk to them about it because what would I have said? I was just amazed, and that's how I knew that. And I left not long after that. I got in an argument with Monica, and I left pretty much the next day after packing real fast and not saying bye to anyone. And I got along well with a lot of the volunteers, and I met up with some of them later on. Like we smoked weed together. We got weed in Colombia, which was fun, especially when you're dealing with all the stress from this sham organization and Monica, dealing with all that stress. To get the weed was quite a relief. But anyways, I just jetted out of there like the next day with my friend. We went traveling on the south coast. We went into some jungles there, had some adventures down there, and I was able to leave all of this behind me. And it's been 8 years since this happened. It's a fucked up story, but it's like I'm glad I got out of that. But wow, the thing that stuck with me through the years was I can't believe those people went along with this and were okay giving an all-right interview to a bad organization. Now let me address 2 points. You may think that perhaps the volunteers told the truth and were honest and said there's a lot of problems here. To be honest would be to point out some very unflattering points. So they did not do that. They just gave very average, vague things about making a difference, and yeah, it has a meaning for me, just nothing too dangerous. Even if they did say something unflattering, do you think that's gonna make it into circulation? Do you think Monica's going to use that? Do you think IVHQ is going to pick that up? No. That threatens their bottom line. Would there have been any point for me to be honest with them and tell them my 10 cents, even though they're not going to make use of it? I mean, maybe, but I think the best course of action here was just non-participation. Because maybe does it give you a good feeling deep inside? Like, oh, my image will get out there. It'll be nice. It'll make me feel good. Like, if that's true, that's too bad. Because you cooperated with something stupid. Hasta luego, amigos.